Welcome everybody to Eye of the Serpent Tarot for another pick a card reading. Today's reading is one I've felt really strongly called to do for some reason. It's just been sort of building in my mind over the last few days, and to be honest, when I'm filming it I hadn't actually planned to be filming a reading today, but I just felt like it had hit boiling point and it needed to be done, that this was sort of a message that I really wanted to be exploring. And as the thumbnail and title said, this is about letting you be fully introduced to your interdimensional self. And what I mean by that is your spiritual self, your past life self, your potentially extraterrestrial or extra dimensional connections and experience and so forth, so that you can really get a sense and an appreciation of how large you are. I kept hearing the Walt Whitman quote, "I am large, I contain multitudes." And I think I was hearing it because it's so true of everybody. I truly believe that everybody is spiritual and psychic, that at various levels in your life you may be aware of that, you may tune into it, you may develop it. There is that maximum about you become a master of something if you spend 10,000 hours on it. So some of you may be very well aware of some and have really worked on that, or your spiritual path. Others may have had experiences that, you might have even put down to coincidence, depending upon how much you connect in with this. But I also believe the theory that I've heard said about spiritual abilities and so forth, that in what we think of as our five senses in the material world, sight, hearing, taste, and so forth, they're not necessarily the quantum of what we do, but it's almost as though it's the point to which there is a blockage put in so that we are not having access all the time to all the information. Because if we did, we'd probably go stark staring mad. It would be a bit like a computer program suddenly flooded with too much information for what it's set up to be able to do in this world, in this life. But that doesn't mean it isn't there, and that doesn't mean that you can't have access to one or more of those things at any given time. And it is very, very likely that if you are the sort of person who comes to these sorts of readings, that you have had experiences of this, and this really is an exploration beyond it. So what I'm going to try and do with this and be a channel for spirit to do is, underneath each of these crystals, which we'll go into in a minute, are pre-chosen cards to do what I would call a map of your interdimensional being, that is hopefully going to pick up skills, talents, connections, extra-dimensionally, extraterrestrially, spiritually, maybe a little bit about past life, the sort of traditions that you might have been connected to. And I'm going to try and synthesize that information and then use tarot to look at what that means in this 3D world, this 3D experience now, and what advice Spirit would have for you to best access that immensity that is you, because everybody is bigger than they think they are. Everybody has more than they think they have. And this is part of the spiritual journey. It's part of what it's all about in this life. And I do feel called to say that in this, as in any reading, because it's a collective reading, this is just a channel from Spirit. Take what resonates for you. You may want to look at more than one reading because your map might be an amalgam of two halves across this. Find what really hits with you and that you really feel, yes, I can see that, and what you can use in a productive way, because the importance of this is owning who you are, not just fitting in with whatever I might say in any particular pile. I have studied tarot for a long time and oracles and grown up with all of this sort of stuff. So it's like a second language to me, but it does not mean that I'm always going to be more right than you will be, or that I am somehow more spiritually advanced. That's not what I'm claiming in this channel or in anything that I do here. I really want this channel to be about people accessing who they are. And that's, I think, why this has been really sort of bubbling under the surface to do this. I've done sort of readings a bit like this, but I really want to get to that point where people understand who they are. I want you to really see who you are and the glory of that. So one of the reasons I've chosen unpolished crystals here is that it's to get that sense that we're all works in progress. So for the piles, we have a lapis lazuli on pile 1, an amethyst on pile 2, and a tiger's eye on pile 3. That may help you choose. It might be the number of the pile. It might be anything. And as I say, you may want to look at more than one reading. But when you know which it is, The timestamps, as always, are in the description box below, and I can see you in your reading. Welcome, Pile 1, to your reading. So these were the oracle cards from different decks that I talked about in the introduction, and what they in combination can provide is a bit of a blueprint or a map of your interdimensional self, your spiritual self. And I'm looking first at this line for a bit of a sense of the history. To me, it's almost the things that connect to the past life. And then this a little bit more about the skills and abilities that has put into your frame in this life before we move into the tarot and so forth. I think that the people who come to pile 1 in this life or in another, but I think for many of you, it's in this life. You either had this or you are going to have this. Have a very direct connection and experience of the divine in whatever form that means to you. It may come from a natural tendency towards balance in relationships, helping and healing others. There is that kind of energy in both of these cards. You are a very old soul. Possibly you don't tell people much about this. You maybe keep all of this under advisement, so to speak, because that connection with the divine has made you understand that something is much greater than any ability that you have, though you actually do have significant abilities as a result of this. And I think in whatever form your spirituality takes, that connection with the divine, as I say, is direct and profound. This is not about just following a faith, whatever the faith is. It is a direct connection. And the reason that I say this is you have St. Christopher. And this is all about the soul journey that is a connection to the divine. St. Christopher is a well-known saint who was about helping people in their soul journey and traveling in their journey in life. And there's certainly a helpful feeling from the Agathans as well, which I'll get to. But he also had a direct experience with Yeshua, with Jesus Christ. So you don't have to be a Christian for this to connect to you, but in his life, at one point, one of the children that he helped cross a stream, a difficult stream, eventually was revealed to have been Jesus or Yeshua. So this is a person in history who had a direct connection to the spiritual or divine that then made him convert to that particular pathway. And as I say, I'm not saying to this that you have to be a Christian or follow that faith. It's a representation of an experience. It's very mystical. You have a high degree of mystical ability. So in the Christian faith, it would be something like St. Christopher. In Islam, it would be something like a Sufi. It's very interesting too that we have the dark night of the soul here, because when we talk about Christian mysticism on certain levels, we can also talk about St. John and his dark night of the soul. So part of that connection is because you are able to experience that, go through that. It feels as though part of who you are was an awakening to the spiritual and divine after maybe a period of doubt. And this could be in this life or it could have been in another life. I actually think for most of you it was a long time ago, a connection that was very powerful in whatever culture or community that you were in, and very direct. There's also something kind of shamanic about this energy. So I think it's in your bones, it's in your interdimensional being, whether you have felt that again this time or whether it is just that you have always had a sense that there was more and a sense of the grand design behind things. It really depends on who's come to this reading. And this permeates everything, and it particularly permeates for you relationships. This is the energy of someone who has experienced a divine union, a twin flame, a soul twin, whatever wording you want to use for it, may be experiencing that in this life, but has certainly before. But it's like it's a bridge to the ultimate divine union that a St. Christopher would have had as a connection. So you're a very old soul, very tuned into that, very connected, very mystical. The interesting thing about the Agathans in terms of an extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional species that you may be connected to, these are actually creatures that live beneath the earth. They are very large. And remember I said that Walt Whitman quote about I am large, I contain multitudes. I think this is just really saying, yes, this is true of you. They are very tall. They are about healing the world once the world has been able to ascend, once we as humanity have been able to move to a higher dimension. So they are all about ascension and about the outcome to the world, the cleaning up of the world and so forth that comes from that kind of experience when it happens on a collective level. So I do think that for many of you, your time will come, whether it's in this life or another, though I suspect, given everything that's going on in the world, it's probably this life, where that divine connection and that understanding of proper and productive and loving relationship in combination with a sense of healing is part of who you are and part of what you're here to do. And you have a direct connection. Again, it's really confirmed here with the Heaven card. You are very much connected to the divine. There you will be getting downloads about what that means and so forth. Interestingly enough, though I don't think you need it, you may use forms of divination, because we've got tea leaf readings, so that could be that you use different forms of divination to make that connection. I don't think you actually need those. If you are using these, I think you'll get to a point where you don't need them, because your mystical journey is much more direct and much more intimate and much more personal with the divine. But you are also in the 3D. So what I'm getting is that you don't need any of this, whether it's tea leaf reading, other divination, or forms of witchcraft, for instance, or even setting your intentions, as this card talks about, to have that connection to the divine. You have it naturally and in a very open channeled way and a very personal way. But in this world, I feel like these and some of these are about how you can use it in this world. Not so much this. The dark night of the soul, I think, is very much tied to the experience that has brought you that personal sense of the divine and that connection. But I do think that you have telepathy and clairalliance. So clairalliance is the clear smelling type of ability. So you may have a bit of a mediumship thing, which is maybe also connecting here to the Tantra concept, not so much about Tantra with an individual on a divine union or twin flame, but with connecting with other souls, people who have passed on and so forth, or even with the Agathans, with those that are going to help with the ascension and the cleaning up of the earth and the helping of Gaia after that particular process has occurred. So you may pick some of that up through smelling something that doesn't appear to have a natural cause but seems to trigger an understanding or knowing for you, or that may, even if you do practice some form of ritual around this, whether it's just meditation and mystical on that level, or whether it's something more herbal or natural, there'll be something in that tells you when you're on the right path. But you also have a high degree of telepathy with people, and particularly with those who you're meant to connect with on your soul journey. So your interdimensional map is about, in a sense, or your challenge, Pile 1, is about having established in this life or some other a very personal connection with the divine, a very deep personal connection with the divine, but still wanting to bring that loving energy into the 3D. How you do that, it's almost as though your interdimensional being is two sides of a coin. And one side of the coin is the mystic, is the person who really probably, if they had their choice, would just like to be with the divine and not worrying about this 3D stuff. But on the other hand, you are here for a purpose, because that connection has made you such a good conduit for helping others to ascend, helping others out of the dark night of the soul. And you may work in a therapeutic area for that reason, or a healing area for that reason. You may have alchemy as part of what you do for that reason. And it is for you, it's almost like you can switch between the two and you have an awareness of it. But my sense probably is that you are more at this point looking at the 3D side of things and any spiritual things that you can do here. The rest, it's something you bring with you. But I think Spirit wants you to know about that, wants you to understand that these abilities don't operate in isolation. They come from a connection that is profound and unusual. And look, everybody ultimately will have this experience, I believe. Everybody ultimately will have the experience of a direct connection with the divine, but that is the mystical path. You have traveled that path. So you are here for a different reason now, but knowing that is your guidance. It's your touchstone. So your interdimensional self is very old in terms of soul age, very, very finely tuned to the good and to helping others. it's almost like somebody who ascended to a particular point and then decided to come back to help others. That's the energy of this. And maybe partners with those interdimensional beings or extraterrestrial beings that are also here, that have chosen to be here. There's a kind of a grounding to the earth here, which is by a choice, I think. And it is because you would like others to have that sense of relationship. So let's have a look. If that's your interdimensional self, if that's who you are, Pile 1, you are a mystic, a highly advanced mystic with a range of spiritual gifts that you have chosen to bring here to help other people ascend and to help other people to relate in a more positive way. What does that really look like in this life? So I'm using the Earthbone Tarot, and I'm using it for a particular reason. The card colouring here is a sort of pinky orange, and the actual cards themselves are very green. And I'm doing that because I think it connects to the root and sacral chakras with the card backing, and the green is the heart. So to me, in terms of what your interdimensional being is and how that operates in the earth, those particular chakra energies are important for us to see what that looks like now, what your mission is now. And then I'll use a different deck which has purple colouring to it to look at what Spirit's direct, and you'll be very much connected to this, direct messaging to you is for this life. So firstly, Spirit, can we get an idea of what this looks like in the actual 3D life at the moment for this interdimensional being? So this is confirming to me, I think, Pile 1, that the generosity of your spirit is what's brought you here. Your interdimensional being didn't actually have to be here, I don't think. It was a choice. But the Six of Jars, which is like the Six of Pentacles, is on a very material level. You are generous, your spirit is generous, and you are here to give to others. There is always an issue potentially to watch out for when that is the case, particularly when it's in spiritual things, to not be overburdened. Now, I think you're probably okay with this because that direct connection to source is likely to give you almost like a never-ending source of battery energy for what you need to do. And you have come here by choice, I believe. But there is always, do make sure that you balance that energy and that you don't overextend yourself. You're very nurturing. I do think for many of you, if you aren't already doing something in the sort of spiritual / healing / therapeutic area, then there's something about that in your career or your vocation anyway. You will always be, you're probably someone who people look at as having that divine feminine sort of maternal instinct. If you're around friends or in a workplace, you might be someone that people almost look to like a mother. You know, you don't have to be a mother, you don't have to be female for that, but there's that nurturing generosity, and you are here for that, which also picks this up. This is why I feel for many of you, the divine union may not be in this life. It could be. It's not saying it couldn't be, but it feels as though there is a possibility, in fact, with these two, that the divine union for you as a mystic is actually with the divine. It's not with another person. That may resonate for some of you, and others may feel like you have that at the moment, and so it's not ruling it out. But I think for many of you, you're almost beyond that issue at the moment. You are here, as I say, to bring something back, to look after and nurture others, and to help people through pain. This is why the path of initiation around the dark night of the soul is so important in your interdimensional map, so to speak. You have gone the distance. You have gone through it. You may well have suffered literally for your faith in one or more lifetimes. You may have been, it's interesting, we have the witch there. If you had followed that particular type of path, you may have literally been around at the time of the Salem witch trials, for instance. There is a sense here that part of that divine ecstasy of that connection may have come through a sacrifice or through some form of pain. So you understand it, and you can also see the way to release it. That's why the Five of Jars is there, or Five of Pentacles. There is that sense that you can take people out of that sense of being alone and so forth, and bring that sort of energy in. there is also a sense, and this is also connecting to childhood as well, I should say. So it's not just the generosity of spirit and generosity of love that you can have around the Six of Jars, but it's also with the maternal instinct. This may be that you were born into a very particular family, may have had a very strong connection to your mother or your mother's line because of that. And there is something in that, but I think it's talking about the deep past as well, because I do think there is a deep past for you. You can inspire others with the Three of Wicks or the Three of Wands there. You are meant to follow your path, but remember St. Christopher was about the soul's journey. The more that you focus on and understand that about yourself, the more that you will go true. You will have the right direction for you, and others will come with you, because there is destiny around you with the Chariot. You are here for a reason. You are definitely here for a reason. And some of that is also about balance. The same balance emotionally of Tantra is the balance of the head and heart that is in the Chariot, and that sense of destiny and momentum. You have a long way to go in this life. I don't care what age you are right now. You may be young, you may be quite old, but you have a long way to go yet. And there will be probably other lives, because you make that choice. You make that choice to help others, and you can see that as part of your destiny. But in this life, it's about nurturing. It's about caring. You may, in fact, have been meant and have parented a new generation of highly gifted, highly spiritual children, potentially with this sort of energy as well. But you are primarily here by choice, and you are here to help and heal others and to put people on a path that is their right destiny, because you've done it, Pile 1. So even if you feel lost at this point, if you haven't really reconnected back with that, once you start to work out where your faith is and what is the connection, it's all going to click into gear if it hasn't already. Though I do think that many of you, it has. And many of you may have had some form of ecstatic experience in meditation or in a dream or something that has given you that sense that, yes, like St. Christopher carrying Yeshua over a stream, you have had that kind of personal connection. It's really strong. So given that, let's use another deck, which, as I say, has a purple colouring, and so a kind of crown and to some degree third eye chakra energy to it, to ask Spirit's advice for you about, given that you're here with a mission, what do they most want to say to you now? That's what I think I'll ask her. What does Spirit most want to say to you to help you in what you're doing here and to really fully recognise who you are? Wow. Okay, so we've got 3 major arcana for a start. We've got the Empress a second time. So Spirit is very much saying that nurturing side of you is very, very important to this in some way. If you aren't a parent, if you aren't a nurturer on that sense, you will be doing it in some other way. And Spirit wants you to consider that if you haven't brought that into your life in any particular way. You may also need to heal some nurturing issues yourself. It may, in fact, be that some of you have been in a childhood situation that was not helpful, that you chose to be there to quickly bring yourself through that accelerated development through the dark night of the soul so that you could actually take your mission on. Because I guess it's true that whenever we're born, no matter how far you've ascended or what you've experienced, you forget what you have come in with. So you may have in fact chosen, some of you I think I'm getting may have in fact chosen to be in a difficult family environment, possibly with the mother, but certainly with the primary nurturing figure. But part of that was for you to learn lessons rapidly, to remember what you've learnt before so that you can heal others in that space and not replicate it for others. That's the connection with the devil there. And part of that, again, is in this deck, it's like the devil, you're looking into a mirror. It's looking into who you are in clearing that out, which is what a mystic does. That's part of the dark night of the soul. So I think Spirit is saying that part of what you will be doing here is going through a dark night of the soul if you haven't already, because each time you incarnate, even though you've got that connection, you have different almost physical requirements, different environments that you're in and challenges. And the higher you've been developed, the more the challenge in a way. So Spirit is saying, hold on to that sense of positive nurturing. And with the Oracle, this is the Hierophant, the spiritual knowing that you have. I do feel that for many of the people here, you may connect to a particular spiritual path with the Oracle, because that's the Hierophant. And so for you, if you haven't really reconnected that, explore what spirituality, what spiritual path calls to you, because it's your gateway back to who you were and what you've already achieved. Because in other lives, I feel like, you could have literally been in the time of Yeshua and have that potential connection. You could have been a Knights Templar. You could have been a samurai with the sort of like honor and spirituality of that. There's something around that, around what that historical experience was and the traditions, and let that come through for you. And again, if this is not a negative connection with a parental figure, it may be something through your maternal line to look at, something around all of that, particularly with the witchcraft thing under there. There may be a very strong divine feminine, and sort of feminine goddess type of energy around you as well. So that's pretty big stuff. I do want to go back very quickly to the Agathans there as well, which is remembering that they are here on earth to help after the ascension. I think if it's not in this life, you are going to be here for that reason. You are going to be, it's like being the sort of like recalibrating and settling of the earth after that thing. You're very crucial for that. After that, you'll probably go somewhere else, to be frank. But I think that you're very committed to this because you've understood the importance of it. So let's ask Spirit, by shuffling, for a few more pieces of advice for you. So I'm going to use a couple of oracles that have sort of spiritual advice, and then we're going to finish up with the soul cards to get a kind of other level piece of information for you about your interdimensional being, pile 1. Okay, so this is picking up, I think, what I was just saying, completion. You are here to help complete this cycle. You are important in completing this cycle and this ascension for people. You know that. You chose to be here. It is part of what you're doing in some way to bring that through in whatever way that resonates for you. I think once it's done, as I say, I got that sense that you're here till that's all done and it's sorted, and then you move on because there's a new journey for you after that. That's how you complete the cycle. It's like I'm getting that you made an oath at some point in some life, and you are really committed to that oath. You're very honourable. You're going to see that through. And the reward of that is sweetness. You have a very sweet nature, actually. That's part of this. I think someone who has a direct connection to the divine almost naturally will, to be honest, so that makes sense. But I think there is a sweetness in the completion, a sweetness that comes to you through living up to your potential in this way and helping others. So Spirit, another couple of pieces of information or support for pile 1's interdimensional being. Okay, so firstly I'm going to go to here, Waxing Gibbous, which is about motivation, about getting things going. I'm getting a couple of things from that pile 1. Firstly, I'm getting that that's part of your sort of therapeutic nurturing, that you are potentially going to coach, mentor others, motivate others, inspire others in some way. In fact, you'd be an incredible inspirational and motivational speaker, I feel, if you chose to do that. You may not choose to do that because with the Agarthan energy, which feels a little bit like behind the scenes, you may not step out on the stage, but if you did, you would be incredibly inspiring in whatever platform you used. So there's a motivation. There's also, maybe this is saying that part of the reason you came to this reading was to motivate you, to reconnect you to who you are, because maybe you have forgotten to some extent. You've been very much in the 3D and helping others, but re-motivating that connection with the divine is important. And possibly if you use crystal energy, rainbow fluorite might help you. It helps with focus. And so I think that's that two sides of the coin and being able to focus on both of them. And then productivity and creativity, bringing that energy through. So I think Spirit wants you to focus on what you're here to do, to complete that, to help the completion, and to have the sweetness involved in it. But you've got to motivate yourself as well as motivating others. So to finish off, I'm going to draw a card from the Soul Cards deck. If people have seen readings where I've used this before, you'll be familiar with it. It's a deck that has very, very profound artistic energy. It doesn't have set meanings, but I'm just asking Spirit for a soul card to show where you are, your interdimensional being is now, and the message that they have for you. And I'll tell you what I see, but I would also suggest you pause the video before you click out and really contemplate it for yourself. Wow. So this is all about the cycles of life. I think it's very interesting that it's come up with a double Empress reading, because that is life and death and the cycles of life and death. I think you are quite comfortable, again, with the dark night of the soul, with the concept of life, death, rebirth, and so forth. But this is also, it feels to me like this is an awakening for you about this, a reminder for you, because I feel as though you're here as your physical form. The skeleton is showing that, but all around there is all this energy. It is reminding you are so much more. This life is not the only life that you've had. This experience is not the only experience. But I'm also getting, because it's got the skeleton and spine, that you have the spine to do what is necessary. You have the strength to do what is necessary. And that energy radiates out from you. But you are an old soul. You've been here many times, probably other dimensions many times as well. But you're meant to make people comfortable with this shift, this change. And with the pain that could go with some of it, because you can show them that is growth and that is expansion. So I do think you're a highly evolved soul, but I do think that for many of you, you may have forgotten part of that. It is important to reconnect back with that and find the faith that is going to take you into that energy of who you are, not just into the day-to-day. I do get the sense that for some of you, you've been very caught up in the day-to-day, and even on a spiritual level with maybe being able to read tea leaves or something like that. It's sort of you're diminishing who you are by doing that. It's like, it's kind of, they're all the things that come with the kit bag. Don't concentrate on the kit bag. Concentrate on who you really are. That, your interdimensional being is much larger than that. So I hope that resonated for you, Pile 1, and I hope that you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like the video and subscribe. And let me know in the comments if it does. I think it's a very, very interesting energy. And I'm very drawn to mysticism. So coming across an energy of someone who I think is very, in terms of mysticism, very developed and very advanced is fascinating to me. Beyond that, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, Pile 2, to your reading. So these are the oracle cards that were under the crystal that you chose to come here, which are, for me, in a sense, the map of your interdimensional being that Spirit wants to talk about. And I use the term advisedly with map here when we have crop circles, so that sense of sort of sacred geometry and the sort of map of signs and so forth that the true crop circles, as opposed to man-made ones, represent. You are an interesting combination of two things, I think, here that are the primary parts of your interdimensional being. I want to talk about the first ones here, and then they do relate to the second, but I think this is your higher self at its most large, and then this is potentially some of how that's manifesting in the world at the moment or in the most recent lives that you've had. We start firstly with the mandala of the heart. This is about the divine feminine. It is about creativity, it is about nurturing, it is about bringing things into being in some way and in a perfect way. And then you have Leonardo da Vinci. And the first thing I get from this is that there's a very amazing balance actually in you between the masculine and the feminine. You are very, very, almost to the point of being androgynous, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you cut your hair and have clothes to be androgynous, but you are very, very balanced in that. You're balanced in what comes from the heart, what is creative in that sense, and what comes from the mind, what is creative in that. Because Leonardo da Vinci was a true Renaissance person, and I think you are a true Renaissance person in every sense of the term, Pile 2. He was a genius, quite frankly, and you may well be as well. He was incredibly attuned to the spirit and to sacred geometry and to the patterns of the universe and how that manifested in the world. Massively ahead of his time in terms of innovation, inventiveness, and so forth. Also very attuned to the politics of his age. So really all those sort of the things that we, and again, I don't really like to talk in gender, but I'm just talking in the things that we tend to think of as masculine or feminine in that kind of energetic level. All those things of the material world, the scientific world, you could be very much a scientist or a creator in some way that's in that kind of, you know, Elon Musk type of energy, or you could be someone who is a painter coming from the heart. There is something fundamentally creative about you, and it has a spark of genius. And part of your interdimensional being is how you bring that in and how you use the signs that the crop circles here represent from your soul tribe, the interdimensional or extraterrestrial beings that may be trying to give you messages. Really look for signs, really look for things that are around patterns. Your pattern recognition is probably amazing. Pay attention to that. But I do think that if you're not manifesting it in this life at the moment, you are an amazing artist. You are an amazing inventor. That is part of who you are on a big level. In almost how you're manifesting it at the moment, there is definitely a sense that for many of you, you look to spiritual arts and you're well developed. You may be someone who can read tarot cards. And in that, I think you're really picking up the sort of mathematical, numerological side of tarot cards, and very much the sort of artistic sides with symbolism, a kind of a Jungian type of feeling to that, if that's the case. You may also be someone who studies astrology, because that picks up the sort of sacred geometry patterns and energies of the universe at a spiritual level. If not, you may have an interest in it, or you may be well served to look at it. I think you may well have studied it in a past life, if not in this one. And you also have a connection, I think, as a medium to the other realms. And this is why I think it's important to be looking for the signs, because I think that spirit, maybe people who have passed on, who care about you, people from your ancestry, or even extra-dimensional beings in this case, communicate with you all the time. And it's important to be open to that. The beauty about this is I think you have an awareness of it. Over here we have the starseed. I do think that if you have thought that you might have been a starseed, might have had extraterrestrial experience, I think this is saying yes. I could not imagine someone like Leonardo da Vinci had not had something like that. He was so unusual for his time, and I think you have that potential to be so a breakthrough in some way, so inventive, so different, because you're bringing something that you remember from another time. This is the portal keeper. This is about the third dimension and 5D ascension and a fulfillment of it. So there's something about what you will create that will help with that you are here to do and help to bring. Just as, again, Leonardo da Vinci pushed all sorts of things in science and mechanics and art so rapidly forward because he was such a genius. And then we have the Ascension Path 11, which shows that you are quite high up the ascension path. Your interdimensional being is looking from a higher level perspective. You access light-based technologies. That's why I'm getting a feeling of like an Elon Musk or someone like that. So there's something in that as well for you. So your interdimensional being is about the spark of invention, the spark of genius, the connection to other dimensions, a very direct connection to other dimensions, and the balance, bringing balance in and harmony in as a result of that becomes the perfect creation that is symmetrically beautiful, or becomes the piece of artwork like a Leonardo da Vinci did, which, you know, strikes awe in anybody and goes straight to the heart. But interestingly enough, I feel that quite a bit of what you do at the moment, you do it at this kind of divinatory level and maybe at a mediumship level. And I think the reason that Spirit wanted this reading and wanted you to come to this reading is for you to understand there's something higher than that for you. What you are meant to be. And if you are doing a lot of this for other people, which I suspect you might be, because you think, well, that's who I am in terms of psychic and spiritual stuff, there's nothing wrong with helping other people, but you are meant to be bringing something else in, something new, and something that advances the evolution of the world. So, okay, let's have a look with tarot at what this is looking like in this life. So I'm firstly using the Earth Bones Tarot, which, as you can see, has a kind of almost sacral chakra and a bit of the root chakra colouring at its back, and heart chakra in its actual card base. because I think those sort of energies are really important in how we ground spiritual energy in this life. And I think for you, the heart chakra very much connects to the mandala of the heart. So let's see what Spirit wants to tell you about this life at the moment and this spark of genius, quite frankly, that you have, and what that's meant, what you're meant to do with it. Okay, this is telling me, my instinct is right, that you have all of this in your interdimensional map, pile 2, but you are underestimating yourself and you are limiting what you do. It looks to me with the 5 of jars and the 5 of crystals, which is like the 5 of cups and the 5 of swords, that you keep things at a level where you're maybe helping with conflicts, with problem solving, with bringing balance into a situation. You could be in a workplace and being a mediator. You could be someone who helps out all your friends, something like that. And it's kind of, you're always in that space of helping people through disappointment or conflict in some way. But you're meant, and you may in fact be doing that partly as a bit of a business with the Queen of Petals there, but you're meant to be bringing in the new inspiration. And what I think Spirit is saying, and we've got the Queen of Crystals, which is like the Queen of Swords reversed. It may be that you are your own worst critic. You are someone who, when it comes to something creative, it's never quite good enough, so you just don't bring it forward and you focus, and maybe even you feel that somehow it's not spiritual to focus on that it's spiritual to focus on other people and heal wounds and do all of that kind of thing. So that's when you're accessing that, but you're limiting yourself in a way that is not meant to happen. You are meant to really nurture whatever this creative instinct is, and it could be anything, as I say, pile 2. It doesn't have to be, painting like Leonardo da Vinci. It could be something in mathematics. It could be computer science. It could be AI, as I kept getting that Elon Musk type feeling. But there's something new and innovative you're meant to bring in. And Spirit is saying that you have limited yourself. You have limited your perception of who you are. And it may be that for some of you there is a critic around you that is stopping you from doing what you do, or even competing with you. But you are more advanced than you think you are. And this is the small stuff. And there's nothing wrong, as I say again, with using any of these sort of knowledge, abilities or whatever to help others. But there's something more for you. There's something more in this life. There's something important. So really try and connect into what is that creative spark of genius. What is that? So let's use another pack, which is using sort of purple energy for crown chakra, third eye chakra sort of connections, to get Spirit's direct advice about how to do that, how to really tap into that Ace of Wands, that Ace of Whips. Okay, so I'll go to the middle card first, which is the Six of Pentacles. This is about really thinking about how you can best manifest your generosity. You have a great generosity of spirit because of the heart up there. That's why you really tend to put other people ahead of yourself. But if you can start to think about manifesting your generosity in a way that that energy comes back to you as well, I think that you will find a supporter, a sponsor, a patron of some sort who is going to recognize what you're trying to do and the value of that. So, and you can manifest that. You can bring that in with the Magician there. You are really advanced on that level. You can, through your creative process, draw that energy to you. And the Magician is the one who has all the skills, all the talents, and like, who better in history than Leonardo da Vinci to represent that, pile 2. So this is saying, really own what you've developed. It may be with the Oracle, which is the Hierophant, that there's something a bit conventional. Like it might be that you do creative stuff as a hobby and you might self-publish a book, for instance, but you haven't sort of looked to get it traditionally published. It could be something like that, where going towards something more traditional and backing your skills will bring you the support that you need. But there is something, it doesn't have to be a book, I'm just using that as an example. There is something, and it's deeply spiritual. The spiritual connection and the psychic ability, magic ability that you have can draw that energy to you, and that's where you should be focusing. You are underselling yourself so much at the moment, pile 2. So I think I'm getting these sort of messages. I think this is why I was so drawn to do this, because it's so important for people to understand how much they actually are and where they might be underselling themselves. So let's ask a couple of oracles from Spirit for a little bit more advice about how to really unlock the magician in you. Get in touch with your creative genius. Okay, so firstly we've got follow through, and I think that's a good message. It's like don't doubt, follow through. You're not deluded if you think that you have something new and different. Don't be dissuaded by the critics. Don't become your own critic. Follow through. You know, they say that success is 1% genius and 99% perspiration. They also say success is primarily showing up. So you have what you need. Don't doubt that, but follow through. That is your form of ascension. Your connection to spirit, your interdimensional connection to spirit, is a direct one in terms of, the structure, the mechanics, the mathematics of the universe in whatever creative form talks to your heart. And that's ascension for you, and it helps others with ascension. So let's get a little bit more advice for you. Okay, so firstly we've got the new moon, new beginnings. This really underlines my feeling that you haven't yet done this. You've forgotten who you were. That's why it was important for you to come here. And by starting again and then following it through and trusting that new beginning, you can use all this other stuff that you have. There's no reason why that can't help you. And certainly the sort of ascension sort of feeling around it, which is being confirmed there. But there is something new you are meant to start. There is something new you're meant to birth into this world. It's creative, it's important, and you need to do that, and you need to see it all the way through. Artemis, the goddess, is here to help you. Goddess of light and divine protector. Fits again with the divine feminine energy around this. She is also incredibly clever. And you are, with that connection to Leonardo da Vinci, incredibly clever. So do not underestimate that. If people start to critique you, it's probably because they're threatened by you. So, pile 2. No pressure here. It's just meant to sort of birth something really unique and different into the world. So I want to finish off with a card from the Soul Cards decks. And if you have seen my readings before, you've probably seen this deck. It's a deck that has incredibly profound imagery in it. It's sort of dreamlike. It doesn't have set meanings. I will tell you what I think it's saying. I suggest that you pause the video before you click off at the end of this and just contemplate it for yourself, because this message is sort of direct to really the interdimensional being in all of us, and that's why it's important for you to interpret it yourself. Okay, I've seen this card before in a similar sort of reading, so I wouldn't be surprised if I'm getting some of the same people here. This is the incredible intelligence and gnosis knowledge of the sort of serpent concept from Gnosticism. That's what it says to me, the kind of serpent as the messenger of wisdom and so forth, and the person receiving that energy with the crown chakra really open. That's picking up this sort of magician and oracle energy as well too. This is saying something is trying to tell you, and it's trying to tell you through this reading as much as anything else, but it is telling you on other levels as well too, to remember who you are, to open the crown chakra, to let that energy in, to pay attention to the signs. They will be symbolic in some way. They will be probably mathematical or very, very symmetrical in some way. There's something like that for you, and they'll be very artistic, and they're about balance in genders as well in some way. But this is about you remembering, because you've forgotten pile 2. And so it was important for you to see this, important for you to know who you really are. So I hope that this resonates for you, and I hope that it helps you. And if so, I very much look forward to whatever you're going to bring into the world, because I think it's wonderful to have people like you in the world. If this does resonate and you know what it is, I'd love to hear about it, but don't give away anything too creative. I always say that around creative things. Always protect your intellectual property and your idea till it's fully flowered, but don't give up on this, and don't limit yourself. You are large. You do contain multitudes, as I said. There is so much more that you can bring. So I hope that you do. And beyond that, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, pile 3, to your reading. Sorry, that's a little bit off center. I'll just fix that up so it's a little bit more in alignment. These cards were under the crystal that you chose to come to this reading, and they are the oracle cards I talked about in the introduction to give me a sense of the map of your interdimensional being. So, and what I found in these readings is this is almost like the higher self, the overarching being, and this is to some degree how that's being manifested at the moment, or the different skills that might be associated with the interdimensional being that you are. So this is interesting. I think, pile 3, you are here to be teachers. You are both here to learn. I think you are the natural learners who see life as an evolution of learning at all stages, spiritually and everything else. So you will always evolve and always learn. But you are here to teach others and to help others find their way through sort of the shadow self issues and negative experiences, to find a sense of balance and wisdom in it. It's very interesting. Bastet is about taking a bit of a break, about understanding things as joyful and pleasurable, and dealing with negative issues by finding a place of calm and enjoyment and pleasure. And there's the wisdom in that, the wisdom of the cat, so to speak. And I'm feeling quite a strong connection maybe to ancient Egypt, that some of you may well have lived in ancient Egypt and been part of that kind of lineage. But part of what you do is about balancing and bringing the wisdom to the shadow self so that people can heal and so that you can heal and always evolve. You understand on a very fundamental level that no matter how much you grow and how much you evolve, you always carry within you the shadow and the capacity to switch and not use it wisely. You always have the potential, as we all do, to do bad as well as good. And that understanding of that and that preparedness to look at it and see it is what helps you stay in this sort of wise, contemplative, meditative sort of feeling. And it's interesting, we have meditation teacher here, and then we have Confucius. So there is that sense of that wisdom that comes from within, and that you may very well teach others in this or follow that sort of practice. But the other thing about Confucius that I think is very interesting with this energy, and part of who I think you are, is Confucius is not just the person with the wonderful sayings, the wise sayings that we consider and that kind of wisdom. He was also a pioneer in making sure that people were treated fairly and that there was education for all. His deep love of learning and of evolution, he thought should be available to all. So I think there is something in you that is like that. Your interdimensional self is about the love of knowledge, learning and evolution, and the belief on a fundamental level that everybody should be able to have that, and that shadow issues like politics or money or anything like that, those sort of social injustice issues, should not stop that. You will recognize that. You have a higher level understanding of when that is occurring, and you have a very deeply wise way of how to bring people out of that in a way that they enjoy, so they're not resisting it in any sense. So your interdimensional self is wise, I think is what I would say, and wise enough to know that there's still even more to learn and more to share. Part of this is because you have faced darkness in this or other lives. In this life or in others, you have potentially been around or even potentially partaken in certain spiritual aspects that were more of the shadow, that were more about the ill intentions or the darker side of magic. Now, so you may have in some lives been involved in that, or you may be around it at the moment, or you may have people who want to go against your energy that is so positive with something dark. Often what happens with people who are very light is the dark will be attracted to them. So there may be something like that you need to be aware of, or it may be something that you've experienced and it's part of what made you wise and part of what made you realize that that is a learning experience. One can move through it and move away from it, that it's not where power is. If you did in some point get involved in that, I think you learnt in the end that's not where power is. And you've opened yourself much more up to the connection with others through the third eye, trusting what you know, as this card says, but also telepathically connecting to others. And the more that you do that, the more that you can see yourself as part of the whole and part of the divine, that in a sense looks out of every face, every eye in the world, that we're all kind of the same as well as we're all different. The more you do that, the less you can be drawn into that. It's just not possible once you get to that point to be as drawn to that. But you are aware that we're always one choice away from slipping back, and that's the wisdom and that's the evolution that you're bringing to this. I do think that you study various things, maybe numerology, maybe other divinatory arts, and you would be very adept at those. And as I say, you're very telepathic, you're very much connected. The meditation teacher, as I say, may be something that you are doing or you could do in this life, or it may be that through learning meditation you've come to that level and you've dealt with the demons that might be in your life, or even anything from a past life that still karmically needs to be sorted through. Because you are meant to ascend. We have the Ascension Path 12, which is about being a guide for humanity. So I do think that's what you're meant to be. You are advanced in this level. In some way, you're meant to be doing this. And interestingly enough, when we get the Twitter platform with this card, I think that it says, I don't think it has to be Twitter, but I think when those cards turn up, it shows that you need a platform, a place to be able to take this knowledge, to share this knowledge, to help others, and to gain knowledge yourself. So there's a sense of an electronic networking for you to really reawaken and reuse this interdimensional self. But I do think most of you are probably pretty well advanced in realizing this about yourself, have done quite a bit of work. If you're very young and you're just dealing with issues that are shadowy, then tap into this. You have a much more ancient sense of knowledge and understanding. And if you have a sense that there's injustice around you, you're probably right. But the thing is to learn how to connect with the right people who you can have enjoyment with. So given that, let's have a look at what is going on with you in your day-to-day life now around your larger interdimensional self. And I'm using a particular pack that has a sort of colours from the sacral and the root chakra as its back, and green, which to me is like the heart chakra on the top, because I feel like that is how we manifest this within the physical world, the sort of the creative, the foundational security, and the heart. So we're asking Spirit specifically for how to use this interdimensional ability and knowledge and wisdom in the best possible way for you in life. So this is definitely telling me that for some of the people who've come here, you have been subject to, I think, the shadow from others, the wrong judgments of others and so forth. You're very, very attuned to that, and you're very, very attuned to when there's injustice in the world, and that's picking up that Confucius energy of things, resources, education and so forth should be shared for the good of all and in a fair way. So there's something about your mission here which is about dealing with injustice, with being able to see the shadow and bring it into better balance and move past it and teach people in some way. So in whatever you're doing in your life, if that is part of it, you are on the right track. You're an incredibly good negotiator. You're very much able to see when people are trying to pull the wool over your eyes or somebody else. Very, very clear thinker. And when necessary, can negotiate better outcomes. Because again, you're coming from this understanding of the higher level impact of things. You are meant, I think, to help people resolve conflict, release themselves from that and be able to make decisions. I think there's something, whatever you do in your life, whether it is literally as a teacher, spiritually, or whether it's in some other thing, in a job or a vocation, you are meant to be a mediation force. You are meant to be a collaborative force. You are meant to bring that balance and that joy back to situations that are often maybe tense. So there's something there, and it's very intellectual. It's very much about learning, because we've got very much strong sort of energy around that for you here. So, and then we have the Page of Crystals. And so that has an energy of communication to it. So to me, the energy of all of this for you is around manifesting this in a very material way, but a way that brings your wisdom into material outcomes and negotiates material outcomes for people in a very clear, clever way. So for that, let's look at another deck which has sort of purple colouring energy, so connecting to the crown and third eye chakra, for just some final advice from the tarot for Spirit, for you, in how you take this learning forward, how you help mediate and resolve issues, which is obviously something that your wisdom is meant to bring to the world. Okay, so I think there's a couple of things that Spirit is telling us here. Firstly, we have 3 court cards. I think that is telling us that there is something about the number 3 and maybe 3 people. So I think it is saying that there are maybe 3 people who you can join with and collaborate with, who are going to help you bring this sort of thing into being, and they're the ones you need to communicate with. If that's the case, we have the Prince of Candles, which is like the Knight of Wands, is a very action-oriented person, very charismatic potentially, just gets on with it. The Prince of Elixirs, which is the Prince of Cups, so someone who's very emotionally resonant. And the King of Keys, possibly the eldest of the 3, and someone who is very intellectual. This may in fact be a teacher that you have, and these may be people that you teach in the next generation, I'm getting for some of you. So for some of you, this is about people, and it's watching out for these people, because if they aren't in your life yet, they are coming, and they're important for you to be able to really realize what you've been brought here to do. For others, it is about finding that balance that is Bastet with the sort of like energy of Wands and energy of Cups, so enjoyment, pleasure, and the ego in a positive way, not in a shadow way, but balancing it with the precision of learning and education and scientific inquiry almost. So I think it's a double message. One, it's about people that could be coming into your life. And the second thing is about, don't go too far in one direction. At the moment, this might be saying that you err more towards learning than to enjoyment, and maybe bring that a little bit more into balance, pile 3. So let's get some other advice for you from Spirit. Okay, this is definitely doubling down on meditation and those sort of practices. You are, I think, meant to teach them, but you're meant to do them as well too. The more that you go within, the more you come to Confucius, and the more you move away from almost like the energy that's coming towards you, the darkness that's coming towards you, because you are here to kind of mediate and dispel that. So you do need to replenish your batteries. You are someone who in the Myers-Briggs thing probably sits on the introvert rather than extrovert side of things, and introverts get their energy from within, extroverts from people around them. So I feel to you, to recharge your batteries, you go within, and I think that's also where you contemplate and you develop that wealth of knowledge that you have. We also have empathy and compassion. So I think it's a couple of things. One is, don't forget to have empathy and compassion for yourself and to enjoy life. You could take on a cause to such a degree that you cease to have that enjoyment. That's the sort of sense I have here, where you maybe do value your mind more than you value the other aspects of your life. And so have that for yourself, and then obviously for others. But I think you probably do naturally have it for others as well too. They may not see that to that degree though. They may see you really as a teacher, not necessarily as someone who's warm. So it could be an indication here that you can draw them in even more and achieve your goals even more by showing that side of you, because you do have that side. So let's have a look at some other advice from Spirit, from a different oracle for you, pile 3. So firstly, we have rainbow fluorite, So that, I think, is basically saying that if you're into crystal energy, this is a crystal that may help you. It's about focus, productivity and creativity. So I think there's something you have to create, something you have to bring into being, possibly a business around this. And it also helps you with the focus, with all that mental energy. So maybe consider having that particular crystal around you. It's also talking again about balance. So I do think that that is for you maybe one of the main things, because your interdimensional being and even what you're doing in this earth, I think is very head oriented, is very philosophically oriented, is very politically oriented, is very education oriented, but it is also about bringing things into balance. So recognize and accept light and dark within you. So I think you already do that philosophically. But if you are not enjoying life as well too, in its own way, you're letting a different type of shadow in you. So it's be aware and allow yourself to enjoy and take time out and go within, because that keeps you ahead of all the potential traps that the dark side can have. So to finish up pile 3, I want to draw a card from the Soul Cards deck. And this deck, if you have seen my readings before, you'll be probably familiar with it if you've seen particularly spiritually based readings, because it's a very profound deck, profound images that to me feel like dream images. So what I always say with that is that I will tell you what I feel is coming from the card that I pull, but maybe pause the video and contemplate it yourself, particularly you, because you kind of go within and contemplate, because it's a bit like dream imagery and your interpretation will be the most valid anyway. So the card that I have for you. Okay, I feel that's your interdimensional self. That's you, your larger sense of self, protecting, looking after and guiding your day-to-day self. And I think this is your self saying, because of that sense of empathy and compassion, that don't forget that for yourself. You are allowed to be happy too. See how the version of you there is smiling. I think you may have a very earnest life and live very seriously. So I think that your higher self is saying, don't forget to have pleasure, don't forget to rest. You are meant to enjoy the wisdom that you have, and that will inspire others. So I think this is your higher self just reminding you of that, because it's like you fight demons in some way, you fight injustice, you fight all those things, you do it exceptionally well, but you mustn't sacrifice yourself in the process. And I think your interdimensional self, the higher self of you, is reminding you of that. So pile 3, I hope that that resonates for you. I think your wisdom is really important in this world. There is a lot of darkness to deal with in the world at the moment. So someone like you is very precious. And so I think it is very important to hear from your interdimensional self, your interdimensional map, to know that you need to also look after yourself. That will make you so much better at being able to help others. And really look into anything you want to learn about in this space, because it's all for you. It's like you're a library. It's like you are a spiritual library, and you are drawing more and more and more into you, and that's really important. But make sure you enjoy it as well, pile 3. I hope you enjoyed this reading, and I hope that it gave some interesting guidance and an understanding for you about the greater you, the bigger you than you possibly see on a day-to-day level. And I hope that it is helpful. If so, please like the video, and if you haven't already done so, subscribe. And if this does really trigger something in you, really does connect, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Beyond that, I hope to see you in future readings.